brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. And before we get started, we want to just shout out our sponsor. Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offer is only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offer available in Ontario. Must be 18 plus. Please play responsibly. Also for the YouTube viewers, please hit the hype button. That really helps out. Please like and subscribe to the show. It helps us out. So before we get started, I am joined by one of my favorite people on the Sens beat, Gord Wilson of TSN 1200. So should be a fun podcast. And yeah, hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, burst of speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And we are here with Gord Wilson. Gordo, thanks so much for taking the time and doing this. How are things with you? It's a fun time of year, isn't it?
Absolutely it is, and your timing is perfect. I just hit like, so I'm ready to go, and from your opening, and ready to go. Yeah, it is a great time of year. Obviously, there are moments when you think preseason is too long. I think the Senators coming out of their game last night in Quebec City against Montreal are now thinking that little soiree into Quebec City was probably a day or two too long after a 5-0 beatdown by the Montreal Canadiens.
What do you take away from that game, Gordo? Like I know it's preseason, and we talk about, hey, it's not the regular season. I think I saw someone say that one year the Leafs went 7-0 and then finished last in preseason, then finished last in the regular season. So there's not too much correlation, but what do you take away from that result?
Well, on ice product, you can't take anything away, really. There was a whole lot of non-compete, and I think from top to bottom here, from the top line down to the bottom line, and the defensemen involved as well. There weren't the greatest saves in the world made by Levi Marilainen either, which means there might have been a goal with some odor, one or two of them perhaps in that game. That being said, you can't take too much away from the on-ice product, but you can take away, I think, some things from the road trip. It was 6 days in Quebec City. And sprinkled over those 6 days, were 2 games. There was a lot of great charitable work done in that community. And I certainly applaud the Senators for all that they did, and the players that have embraced the philosophy that this organization started in 1992. We want to make inroads in the community, and we are responsible for doing that and have to have a responsibility to embrace that. And since 1992, right until this past weekend, this club has done that with open arms, and one of the best in I think in the NHL in doing just that. That being said, from what I could take away based on what we saw in the on-ice product last night, was maybe they were a day or two too late, too long in Quebec City. 4 days, maybe 5 maximum. I've been on a lot of those bonding experiences over the years in my career, and they can get a little bit tiring. Not tiresome, but tiring. Don't think for a second that the players weren't embracing this, all looking forward to it, but they were anxious to get home after last night's game.
For sure. And if you think about it, just like as people that have never played the game at a high level, but they were out and about almost every day, going to food banks, going to Thomas Chabot's primary school, like early in the morning, those are long days. And then you have to play hockey, right? And you get out of your routine, and it's not typical. Like, this isn't what they're typically doing on a day-to-day. So I think it makes sense. The one thing I am a bit concerned of just in the preseason, is just they don't seem to be generating a lot of chances, especially offensively. And I wouldn't be too worried, but that is a bit reminiscent of last year, right? And you're with the team all the time, like they would get, they'd have a lot of zone time, but getting those grade A chances, especially at 5-on-5, are not always plentiful. And we've talked about the stat. They've been, they were second last at 5-on-5 goal scoring last year, right? And I don't think that's all. I think that stat maybe has a little bit of statistical anomaly to it. But how concerned are you just maybe of how this team in the regular season is going to be able to produce offense?
Yeah, really, it's the $1 million question going into this season. When you do rank 31st in the NHL in goals for at 5-on-5, you need help offensively. There's no question about that. I think that correlates, though, to a 5-on-5 shooting percentage, where the Senators over the last few years have been traditionally very low, and they were ranked 30th in the NHL last year. They need players to shoot more. They need players to either hit the net or hit the back of the net, obviously more. But I think more than anything, they need players to embrace the thought of going to the dirty areas and staying there. In between the dots has been proven that that's where you're going to get to all these greasy goals. And in today's NHL, with the skill level the way it is and the way coaching is defensively, you need to play an ugly game. And I think the Senators need to embrace more of that, more than anything else. Look, they scored 1 goal against a goalie in the last 6 periods of hockey, right? An empty net goal against New Jersey, 1 goal against the goaltender in a 2-0 win, and no goals scored in the 5-0 loss to the Montreal Canadiens. Offense, you want to clear up this problem as quickly as possible. Just disregard the last couple of games or this preseason so far, where they're 2-2 in preseason, by saying, well, it's just preseason. But you want to attack the problem immediately, because this has been an ongoing problem. One of the things that I've thoroughly enjoyed about the coaching philosophy and introduction to Travis Green's coaching philosophy and implementing the philosophy is Travis is as honest with his players as the day is long. And he said something very interesting about Thomas Chabot the other day. And I think we'll all agree, Alex, that Shabby is coming off probably a career year. Last year was his best season, first in the NHL as a plus player, right? So his conversation with Travis, and Coach Green shared a little bit of this with us the other day by saying, you know what, Shabby, you're a fabulous player. You've got all these skills, but you haven't made the playoffs in the first 8 years of your career, which means you're part of the problem, right? And no solid NHL player wants to hear that. But missing the playoffs your entire career up until last year means it's a problem, and you're part of the problem. Brady Tkachuk, you're part of the problem. Travis has allowed these players to buy into what he's selling. And once they started to do that, and once the top players started to do that, others will follow suit. There's no question. And I think that's a big, big reason why Thomas had such a terrific year last year. Now the philosophy is, okay, we've established a presence in our own end. We're shoring up defense. What were they? 8th in the NHL in save percentage. The year before, I think they were 31st. Okay, so defensively, they've played a much better game under Travis Green. Now he's got to sell the thought that, all right, the hard areas are where you're going to score goals. We're not doing enough of that. And until they buy into that, I think we're going to continue to see a struggle at 5-on-5 offense.
And it's interesting, about Shabby. I asked Travis Green in Quebec City about Chabot's evolution, and he said something interesting. Like, when I first took the job, I thought he was a one-way guy. There was a stigma, like just all offense, and credit to Chabot for turning around, becoming a much better defensive player. And as you mentioned, hearing that hard kind of coaching and that kind of, and taking it and turning it around. Right. And you look at Tim Stützle, who went from very much a one-dimensional player to a really good two-way player. Brady Tkachuk got better defensively. Drake Batherson. Like, I think Travis Green deserves a lot of credit for, in 1 year, changing the fundamentals.
Yeah. Well, first of all, credit to you for bringing that out. I think that quote from Travis about you were part of the problem was off the question that you asked. A nice job there. And I mentioned that on the broadcast last night. It's hard not to, because it makes so much sense. And again, it's the last thing players want to hear. You're part of the problem here. We've missed the playoffs 8 years in a row. Guess what? You're part of it, which means you are part of the problem. And you don't think that way as an athlete until you're actually presented that situation. I'll take it back a little bit further, though, as well, Alex, because Jacques Martin took over the team last December, right? And he had, or 2 Decembers
2 years ago. Yeah.
And he had a major influence in getting a message across that it's defense first. Until we learn to play defense, and Jacques was always known as a defensive coach, right? His teams were always very stingy, always very solid in their own end. And what people, I think, at times tend to forget, over the 9 years that he was the coach of this team, the Senators were a top 5 team offensively as well as a top 5 team defensively. They were that complete, pardon me. And I think when Jacques took over, and remember, he didn't go on the ice for practice. He had some health issues and wasn't able to go on the ice to practice. So he spent a lot of time either just sitting in one-on-one meetings with players or in front of a video screen and doing an awful lot of video with the players. But I think it was the influence to playing better defensive hockey really, really did start with Jacques taking over the final 5-6 months of that season.
No, for sure. And you talked about almost the Sens' chances this year and how well they play is really predicated on how much they're going to score. The one thing that I think that this team has is a defensive backbone, right? And that I almost feel like their floor as a team will be as a very competitive team. They're going to be in a lot of games because I don't think they're going to give up a lot of chances, right?
Yeah.
And the next step for them is to win that game 4-2 rather than it being 2-2 late in the third.
Yeah,
right. Like getting that extra goal, right? And the thing I'm a bit worried about.
At the same time, I'm going to interrupt here very quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
You cannot cheat on the side of offense. This is this is all part of the maturation process, right? Okay, we've seen an evolution of this team getting better defensively, but now they're all hearing, well, we need to get better offensively. We can score goals. We just need to do it in a better fashion and a more consistent fashion. Young players have a tendency to do just that, cheat on the side of where their weaknesses are. And if that happens, the team will be in more trouble than they want to be.
For sure. And I asked Tim Stützle about that, right? Because he became a really complete player last year. But, the offense, he wasn't scoring as much. He was producing a lot of assists, but the goal tallies were coming. And I said, how do you try to take that next step? And he said something great. And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's basically, hey, it's great to score 50 goals, but it doesn't matter if I'm not winning. Right. And I think that's what was the case, I think 2 years ago before Jacques and then now Travis came in. And I know Travis has talked about trying to, add offense to this system without taking too much away or anything away from the defensive side. But my kind of concern is outside of Tim Stützle, Brady Tkachuk, who are you leaning on to score a lot of goals? I don't see a lot of goal creation in this lineup. A lot of really good players.
Yeah.
But where are the goals going to come? I think it's going to be an interesting question.
Well, it'll be a collection of, by committee, more goals by committee, and you need that. You can't just have 2 30-goal scorers on your team and be completely successful unless you're a completely sound defensive hockey club. That being said, the likes of Dylan Cousins, a 31-goal ceiling so far. Does he have more in him? I think yes. Shane Pinto, a career year last year with 21 goals. Does he have more in him? I think we all saw that, yes, there's going to be more from Shane Pinto offensively. The 2 goals that he scored against the Leafs last week in preseason were outstanding goals and the way to get things done. I think there's going to be more from him. And, of course, there's always Drake Batherson, right? A 28-goal ceiling, and I think everybody's kind of waiting for Drake. And we knock on wood that his health is progressing to the point where he'll be in the opening day lineup. He's played 3 consecutive seasons of 82 games, and it's a pride factor for him to play as much as he can. He doesn't want to get taken out of the lineup, and it's not statistics based. It's I like playing, and I think there's the possibility that he can produce a little bit more as well. But again, I'll just come back to the mindset of we got to go to some more dirty areas here and hang around those dirty areas a lot longer than we usually do, because this team does have the ability. This team has people who have the ability, or players who have the ability to add more offense to their game.
And again, I don't know how you you change that outside of a mindset, right, as you mentioned. But if you look at the stats last year, they were not good at getting high danger chances.
Yeah.
I don't have the stat in front of me, but they were in the bottom half of the league, right? So especially on 5-on-5. So that's the area to improve upon. And I do think, as you mentioned, Dylan Cousins can take a step. I think Fabian Zetterlund, it's going to be very interesting to see if he's a 20-goal scorer. I think he's a good player. I don't know if I think he's probably a consistent 20 goals guy, but I don't know if he's much more than that, right? And he definitely works hard. You see the pictures of him at the gym and stuff, so
Yeah.
he seems pretty motivated to eclipse that. But at the same time, as you mentioned, I think Drake Batherson is a bit of a linchpin for this team in terms of he had a career high in points last year, I think 68. Can he become a 70, 80 point guy? I don't know if that's the case. I feel like he's kind of in and around where he maxes out, but he's another guy. So the good thing that I do think this team has, and I don't know how you feel about it, is that they are young, right? And that they're all on that aging curve that you can see Shane Pinto, becoming a bit better offensively. You can see Dylan Cousins coming back to a 30-goal guy. You can see Fabian Zetterlund taking a little bit of a step, right? Outside of Perron and Giroux, who are on the back nine, everyone else is like entering the front, like the ninth hole of their career, right? Like they're hitting their primes, right? So
That being said, you're only young for a certain amount of time, right? Like I'm way too young to be this old. And I just saw myself on camera here. I don't have a dislocated shoulder here. I've got one of my two Goldens that he's burning a hole in my side here just because he needs to get scratched here. So I'm not.
Does it remind you of Dino on your tail?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not playing hurt here, but you're right. There's lots of room for growth. And again, the emphasis is you cannot cheat on what you're wanting to emphasize, because they've done and taken great strides in becoming a much better defensive team, which was vital for this hockey club to do. They've done that. Is there still room for improvement? Absolutely, there is defensively. And they scored enough to win last year, right? They scored enough to get themselves where they wanted to be. So if that trend continues, they should be in good shape.
The one storyline that we're going to see kind of evolve throughout training camp is going to be Carter Yakemchuk, and he played really well on Sunday against New Jersey. I think he was so, but the whole team was bad. I wouldn't have said that he had a particularly awful night or anything like that. How real do you think it is that he could make this roster, right? He's playing with Shabbat. He played with Sanderson. Obviously, we don't know the availability of Nick Jensen and Tyler Clevin, who are both practicing, but I still think they're definitely battling their injuries that are different ones. So how real or how possible do you think it is that we see Carter Yakemchuk, on the team on opening night?
Well, first of all, I'll start by saying I love a good marinade. Okay. This is like, you want to marinate a nice steak or chicken or whatever, and it just comes out that much tastier. I think the same applies to young players like a Carter Yakemchuk. And by that, I mean, there is nothing wrong with, I think Randy Carlisle said it to me once in Anaheim. We want to overcook our prospects sometimes. We want to get them just right, and sometimes it takes a little bit of overcooking before they can come to this league. It's a great step. It's a gigantic step, right? And we're asking this 19 now, just 20-year-old Carter Yakemchuk to take this massive step. He's not played consistent pro hockey yet, and it's going to be a big adjustment. Do we like what we see so far? Did we like what we saw last year in the 7 preseason games that he played, or 6 preseason games that he played, or 5? I can't remember which one, but yes, we absolutely did. But he went back to junior. He worked on different things. He toned down his offensive focus and focused in more on what the organization asked him to do, which was to play better defensive hockey. Mission accomplished. He becomes a first-year pro now. It's going to be a major step going from the Western Hockey League to the American Hockey League, like a major step. Not many youngsters do it. And there are a lot of first rounders who haven't been able to go from junior to the NHL like that. And as a defenseman, it's probably even a little bit tougher. I have all that to be said. I have zero issue with him going to Belleville and starting the season there, and looking at him as This is a massive bonus prospect that we have now in our system, that if the learning curve is what we're anticipating, because we saw it last year from training camp to regular season in Calgary last year in the Western Hockey League to what we're seeing in preseason here. He's worked on his size, he's worked on his strength, he's worked on his skating. Now it's adjusting to the speed of the game as much as anything. And we're seeing the progress there as well. So there's nothing wrong with him going to the American League. And look at, if he starts to dominate, then what a bonus this team has, right? What a bonus. But, for me, I'm looking at Carter Yakemchuk strictly as right now a depth player. And anytime you have a young 20-year-old that you can call upon to come into your team and not hurt your hockey club, the last thing you want for a young player to do is make a mistake in his first, second, third, fourth game of the NHL, or even third or fourth week of the NHL, make a mistake and see his confidence just do this. I mean, that's the worst thing that can happen to a young player, or a lot of young players. That's the last thing Steve Staios and company want to have happen. Let him go and learn the trade a little bit better down in a lesser league, but very close to what he's going to see at the NHL on a daily basis, and see what happens. I don't think there's any need whatsoever to rush this young man.
What I like about how he's been deployed is that he's playing with the Sanderson and Shabbat, which I think for the most part, like when he makes the NHL, I think he's better suited in a top 4 role, especially to provide some offense. Maybe he's not there defensively. I don't feel he's been out of touch, but I do think that in the end, in 2-3 years from now, he is going to be Shabbat or Sanderson's partner. And I think it's good to kind of get him acclimatized to that. And I completely agree. I think he should be in Belleville, play a couple games. The one interesting thing, though, that's a bit of a wrinkle is that, I asked Travis Green a couple days ago about Jordan Spence.
Yep.
And he was like, oh, he's been okay. He wasn't glowing about him, and he's playing with Sabrango, which is essentially Ottawa's 4th pairing. We'll see. It depends on, obviously, the health statuses of Nick Jensen and Tyler Clevin, who have been taking line rushes but haven't been playing games. But it's just interesting. It's just something to kind of keep an eye on, is how much trust does Travis Green have in Spence? And there isn't really another alternative outside of Manpalo, who hasn't had a great preseason, to be honest. So the right side, there's a lot of guys playing well, but I think Yakemchuk's been the best guy out of kind of the 3 or 4 competing for that final spot outside of Jensen and obviously Zub. So that's something to monitor, I think, moving forward, is who's that bottom pair defenseman? Is it Yakemchuk, which I still think you're right. He's probably going to the AHL. Is it Spence? Is it Manpalo? You look at last year and Travis Green played Travis Hamonic over JBD, and I don't think JBD is a world beater, but he clearly liked the physicality and size over kind of a more diminutive player with a little bit less grit. So that's what we've seen so far, and Spence is more of that JBD mold. So I'm just curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, 5-letter word that you just used there, and it's not taken lightly by the coaches, and that's trust, right? It's the trust factor. And a coach, you earn the trust of a coach, and once you do, unless you completely screw it up, it's hard to lose that trust factor. And Travis Green certainly had a trust in Travis Hamonic. There's no question about that. More so than he had a trust in Jacob Bernard Docker, as you said. But with that in mind, he's still learning about Spence. So unless Spence does something egregiously bad, there's still that feel out process that Travis Green needs to have. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jordan Spence plays both games of the next 2 preseason, Thursday night in St. Louis and possibly again on Saturday against Montreal in Montreal. He will welcome that opportunity with open arms, because he knows he's trying to build the trust of the coaching staff. So it's at the end of every season, whether you win the Stanley Cup or you come close to winning it, or you just make the playoffs for the first time in 8 years, the one thing every coach will tell you is to his general manager, give me options. I need options. And the more options I have, the better I'm going to be able to get our team to be where we want it to be. And a case in point here, you can go through 10 defensemen over the course of a long playoff run, which is a good thing it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's a bad thing if you've lost a couple of your top 6 defensemen, but it's a good thing if you have guys who can fill the void. And that's what every organization strives to have.
And I do think that will be probably the biggest strength of the Senators team going into this season is that you look like they have way too many centers, right? And you look at Ridley Gregg, Michael Amadio on the wings, like they can play down the middle. We have Lars Eller as well as the 4th line center. He looks like he's on track to come back. Like they can withstand a couple injuries at key positions, and it's not like the sky is falling, right? Where it felt like last year when Nick Jensen was hurt, when Artem Zub was hurt on the right side, you're like, oh my God, who is playing top 4 minutes? And you can look at a Jordan Spence, and maybe he's not perfect as a player, but he's played top 4 minutes in the NHL before, and you're now putting him in instead of a guy like JPD or Travis Hamonic that really aren't suited for the role. If you look at if Dylan Cousins gets hurt or whoever, knock on wood, you can put Ridley Gregg down the middle as your 3rd line center, and he can still be an effective player. Like this team is much deeper than I think they were last year. And I think that they're almost built really well for the regular season in that sense, because there's going to be injuries, right?
100%.
And they're going to be able to withstand it better than I think a lot of teams, especially in the Atlantic Division. Like if Toronto, loses Matthews, Nylander, or Tavares, like they've gone a bit deeper, but they're not as deep. Look at Montreal; they don't have a 2nd line center really. Maybe it's Kirby Doc, but if Nick Suzuki gets hurt, right? Well, with the Senators, if Stützle gets injured, it's not good, but they have enough depth to kind of patch the holes. So I think that's one thing that Steve Staios deserves a lot of credit for, bringing in a lot of good players that kind of have built the depth. It's just maybe that star and talent outside of a couple guys isn't right there. But how excited are you to watch Jake Sanderson this year? Like speaking of star talent.
Yeah, without question. I love the fact that you can see progress that he's made in the off season. Okay. And he came to camp last year, and you could just tell. Sorry, I've got 2 dogs now on either side of me here, so it looks like downhill skiing, but
that's okay.
You looked at Jake physically last summer, and his neck was big. Like he's just a bigger person, right? And he's filling out. And this is the same that's going to happen to Carter Yakemchuk. I think he's 6'3", 209 right now. Well, next year he's going to be 6'3", 210, 220 maybe. Who knows, 215, but just more solid. That's the case with Jake. And obviously when you see after the physical testing on day 1 of training camp, who was the most physically fit player, you knew, and it was Jake Sanderson, and you could almost predict that just based on his determination, right? And he's very fortunate that he's grown up in this hockey environment with his dad playing over 1,000 games in the NHL, getting a chance to see how hard his dad Jeff worked for the longevity that he enjoyed. Jake is of the same mindset and just an extremely talented. Well, he's a hockey player. Let's put it that way. He's just a hockey player, and these are the fun ones that you get to watch. And for my career, Chris Phillips was another one of those. Chris Neal, another one of those. Over the years, getting a chance to see these young players come in and just improve year after year after year, but they have to have examples that have been set before them. And obviously, Jake has talked an awful lot about Travis Hamonic, right? And Travis no longer with the hockey club, and he took an awful lot of heat and ribbing and everything else for things that he did on the ice. But boy, oh boy, you ask any player and they'd say pretty valuable guy in the locker room or in the gym. And Jake Sanderson would be probably first in line to say how much he appreciated the efforts of the veteran Travis Hamonic. I'm like you, extremely excited to see the progress of Sandy. If there is improvement that needs, I just love him to hit the net a little bit more. The high ones over the blocker can be frustrating for sure. Frustrating for him. I watched him in a practice last year, and I think it was in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And there were two players that I was focusing in on at this practice in Los Angeles. Shane Pinto spent about an hour, maybe close to 90 minutes, one-on-one with Daniel Alfredson when the practice ended. It was fascinating to watch. It was just like a Hall of Fame lesson, right?
Yeah.
Master class. And Alfie went over everything. And another player that really stood out after that practice was Jake. He must have shot 200 pucks afterwards from the point. And all kinds of different angles, and just working on his craft here. And this is what they have to do. The young players know where they need to improve, and you have to have the willingness to put in the time. And certainly both of those players, and obviously Jake as well, have committed to doing that.
For sure. And I interviewed Jake like a week ago at the Sensplex, and practices ended, and I waited just in the cold for like 35 minutes because he was just out there with Shane Pinto.
There you go.
Speaking of him, just working on his game, just, doing reverse pivots into a shot, like just different things. And it's interesting, like you talk about a shot, and I agree. Like, I think that the offensive part of his game, however well he gets at that, that's what his ceiling is going to be. Because defensively, I don't know if outside of maybe Jacob Slavin, there's a more like complete defensive defenseman in the league outside of Jake Sanderson. But you look at his offensive totals and just the way he carries the puck in the offensive zone this year and last year compared to his rookie season, right?
Yeah.
He felt like a stay-at-home defenseman when he jumped into the league. Now he's like a 50-60 point guy, right?
Yeah.
And that's because every day, as you've seen, as I've seen, he puts in that extra work. He works on a shot. He knows what he needs to improve upon and works on it. And I think that's why I feel so confident that he's going to be a top 5 defenseman in this league for a long time, is because the effort is never gonna, like, he's always going to be improving, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And if you have that work ethic and the talent, it's hard to kind of miss, right? So he's my favorite player to watch on the team. As there's a lot of great players, but I just love just silky defenseman that's always in the right place. Did you see that was the 2-on-1 last night for Montreal, where he just he was out of position and he caught up in a millisecond? It was unbelievable. He does that all the time, but
I know which one you mean. He had pinched down the left wing wall. He was about 20 feet inside the Montreal line. And I know he took a peek, or he heard Arthur Kaliev say, "I'm behind you," because that's when he went in a little bit more offensively. Puck got turned over. Kaliev lost possession of the puck inside the Montreal line. That led to the 2-on-1. Kaliev was about 6 or 7 strides ahead of Jake, and Jake put on the Jets. I know the play perfectly here because I commented on it in the broadcast last night, and blew by Kaliev and caught up and broke up the 2-on-1. And this is one of the greatest compliments I have heard about Jake, and it came in his first year. And I did a lot of talking with the defenseman, everybody on the team, about him. And the general consensus from everybody I spoke with inside the Ottawa locker room was he'll win more than one Norris Trophy. Right? You just mentioned top 5 defenseman in the NHL. Well, he might be a top 1. Well, he will be a top 1. He'll get more and more votes for the Norris Trophy until he finally does win one. I have no doubts about that at all. Just watching.
It's so funny. I think I've said it before on the show, is that I asked him last year at the beginning of the season when he was struggling a bit. The offense wasn't coming.
Nations.
Before, like November, December. And I asked him, what are your personal goals? And he says, I just want to be a great defenseman. I don't think I can win a Norris because I'm never going to be a 70, 80 point guy. And then from January to the end of the season, he was, I think, second in points and was almost a point per game as a defenseman.
Yeah.
So, if you do that and you have the defense, I think he can definitely win a Norris Trophy. I don't know if he will, because it's hard to supplant, Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes and maybe Lane Hudson too, who just will have gaudy offensive totals. But I think Jake Sanderson is going to be one of the best defensemen in the league for a long, long time. I don't know if he'll ever be at the Erik Karlsson that you watched in 2017 peak, but I think he's going to be pretty close. Like, I think he's going to be just an unbelievable defenseman. And I think if you're the Senators, like, why you should believe in this group is that come playoff time and in the regular season, you're going to have one of the 3, 4, 5 best defensemen in terms of overall impact in the league. And you're going to win a lot of those minutes, right? And that's a good thing to have.
And all at a very affordable price, right?
I know.
Yeah,
It's
that's the interesting thing. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think we're probably going down the same thing. Like, you look at Kirill Kaprizov and you see that gaudy number, and you look at the Senators and Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle make one Kaprizov. They're not even. I think it's a bit less, right? It's like $1 million less or something like that. So when you have all your best players locked up for very reasonable prices, you're in a really good position to add around them and become a really good team.
Yep, absolutely. The interesting thing that I'm looking forward to seeing as well is how this team reacts to it being an Olympic year, because there are going to be players who are going to be, I won't say focused on the Olympics, but they will certainly have the Olympics in the backs of their minds. And we witnessed that last year with Jake, right? I think there was an inner pressure for him to perform as well as he possibly could to stay in the conversation to make Team USA for the Four Nations tournament. Now, he did not get there without an injury to someone else on the team. So, and then look what he did when he got there. There's no question he's front and center on Team USA's Olympic radar screen now, which is a huge plus for him. But I think he's admitted as well that he can't put too much pressure on. And I think, we've talked to a bunch of these guys in various scrums over the last couple of weeks, and the Olympics have come up, and the same refrain is being made. We have to focus in on the Ottawa Senators, and we have to focus in on the first 3 months of the NHL season more than anything else. Maybe it's easier said than done, though. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, just with that,
excuse me.
And I totally agree. I wouldn't say they're lying, but I don't know if it's not in the back of their mind. Like, I don't maybe fully believe that. I think it's definitely front and center. And you look at Brady Tkachuk and how much it means to him, and obviously his brother and Jake Sanderson. But like, both of those guys scored in the Four Nations finals, right? Like that was the breakout party for both those players in many ways. But I guess the other guy that's probably in contention to going to the Olympics outside of Tim Stützle, who will go with Germany, is maybe Linus Ullmark. And what have you made of his preseason, saying, starting off saying he wasn't playing well, had a shaky debut. He was fine in his other game on Sunday, but he only had, I think, 14 shots. So it's not really too much to glean from that. How confident are you that Linus Ullmark will be the backbone of the Senators team heading into the 25-26 campaign?
Least of my worries is Linus stopping the puck, right? He's got the ability to do that in any situation. And he's proved that year after year, including 3 years ago when he won the Vezina Trophy as the best goaltender in the NHL. And it was not even close. It was hands down Linus Ullmark. And when he got hot last year, in the month of December, he was all world. He was without question the best goaltender on the planet. I think he went through a stretch, Alex, of 8-0-1. I think his save percentage was .956. His goals against average was 146, 1.46. Off the chart numbers, right? And then he got hurt. So that's the big question. That's the only lack of confidence I have in Linus Ullmark is, can he stay healthy? And if he can, sky's the limit for the hockey club. Sky's the limit for him and the numbers that we'll see from him, and for the hockey club as well. I don't think there's any question. It all starts in goal. And for the first time in a long time, the Senators have a goaltender who can bring them to another level, but he has to stay healthy.
Exactly. And I think what he benefits from, like he did in Boston, and I don't know if the Senators team will be as stout defensively as that Boston team was, but he'll have a good team in front of him, right? Like, I think past goaltenders in Ottawa, I think you can definitely say underperformed, but they were also not in a great environment. And I think both Ullmark and Meriläinen will be, I think, in an environment where, sure, Ottawa will need them to play well if they're going to make the playoffs and hopefully go deep in them. but it won't be just complete chaos in front like you saw for many, many years in Ottawa. So it's going to be interesting. My kind of maybe one of the other questions that I'm curious to ask you about and what your thoughts are is just the first line, right? And we've seen Tkachuk, Stützle, Giroux be that line for the past 3 years, right? And it looks like that's going to be the case going into year 4 of Giroux's tenure in Ottawa. How much do you believe that Claude Giroux's the right guy on that line? If you look at the analytics, they would tell you that's the case. He's getting a bit older, of course, still a really good player. But how much do you think that's the best first line of the Ottawa Senators with Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux?
I have zero issues with if that's how it's going to shake down. No issues whatsoever with those three. The chemistry has been proved. They have shown that they have a chemistry together. They have shown that they can produce together. They all like each other. They like playing with each other. It's a huge plus, obviously. But at the same time, it comes back to what I talked about earlier, the coach having options. And you know what? There's going to be an opportunity for Travis to say, okay, it's going to work tonight and it's not working tomorrow night, and we'll put Fabian Zetterlund up there, or we'll put Drake Batherson with Brady and Tim. Maybe we put Shane Pinto in the middle between Brady and Claude. It's whatever the coach is seeing on the ice at the time. And if you know, in a perfect world, can they play together for over an 82 game stretch and be productive and successful? That's a perfect world. And the NHL is far from a perfect world, and players are far from living in an on ice perfect world. So the bottom line is there are options. And, you know, there was a line of Jason Spezza, Daniel Alfredson, and Danny Heatley once that was extremely productive. But at some time throughout a season with those three, one might be sick or one might not be up to snuff, and a young man by the name of Chris Kelly would get moved up to the right wing or the left wing or wherever, or center. He was probably the best utility player that this team has ever had, and he's gone on to a wonderful coaching career with the Boston Bruins. And you know what, the Senators, maybe Mike Amadio at times sees time up on the top line, or Ridley Gregg moves to the wing. It's the fact that there are options is all that the coach wants, and the players will tell him with their on ice play where they belong.
I think you hit on an interesting thread line where for Travis Green, is it better to have Tkachuk and Stützle together, or is it better to separate them? Right.
Yeah.
And I think, in my opinion, it might be better to separate them during the regular season just to see what that's like. The problem was that Tkachuk's line would do well, but Stützle's line last year when they were separated would not do as well. And I don't think that's an indictment on Tim Stützle. I still think he's a fantastic player, of course, but I think they didn't have the right maybe lines and wingers for him, just because he's such a speedy player. You kind of have to keep up with his pace, or you just have to be as good as Brady Tkachuk is, which there's not that many guys out there in the world that are as good as Brady Tkachuk. So I'd be curious if we see at some point in the year where basically Travis Green's like, I'm just going to go in a complete blender and I'm going to make us have basically 3 second lines. I'm going to have Pinto with Tkachuk and Amadio, and I'm going to have Cousins with Batherson and Gregg, and I'm going to have Stützle with Perron and Giroux or something. And that would be, I don't know if it'd work, but it's sure as hell interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's options that the coach wants and gets and has the opportunity to work with, right? One thing that's probably going to be a fairly constant or consistent thing that we will see, which we see on just about every team, if there is success between a centerman and a winger, it's the duos, right? And then you mix in somebody else to change the dynamic of the line a little bit. And I think it's pretty clear that Tim and Brady do work very well together.
For sure. Gordo, I will let you attend to your doggos. Before I let you go, is there anything at 1200? I know technically we are rivals considering I'm at Sportsnet, but not on this show. We are best of friends. So is there anything you want to plug for TSN or anything at the radio station just for people to keep their eyes and ears open for?
Well, we've got each and every Ottawa Senators game on the radio, and that's worth a listen as far as I'm concerned. Even tomorrow night's game in St. Louis, where there is is no television coverage. We're going to be picking up the in-house feed and calling the game off a monitor from the in-house feed. Should be a lot of fun, a little bit of a different challenge, but Dean and I are very much into challenges at this stage of our career. So absolutely. No, looking forward to it. And then the rematch Saturday night, we'll bring you right inside the rink on the radio. So I appreciate you giving me the chance to say that. We look forward to, I think this is our 34th season, and nothing will change. Dean was extremely prepared last night, and it's tough for me to keep up. And but we had a lot of fun doing it, and we continue to do just that.
Well, I feel like you deserve an award to be with Dean Brown all the time, because I love Dino. He's the best. You guys are the best. I remember when I first started covering the team, I would be like always in transit, so I could listen to you guys all the time. It was a blast. I still remember some games where I could just hear you just being not upset would not be the right word, but let's just say when it's 4-0 in the first period, you're saying, okay, well, why are we doing this, guys? Why is this happening again? But thankfully, I don't think you'll be calling games like that or as many this season. So, Gordo, thanks so much for taking the time. I'll see you at the rink tomorrow. And everyone check out TSN 1200, the best to ever do it, you two. So I grew up with you guys, and it's awesome to kind of get to know you as well.
It's fun being old, and I don't feel as old as I really am. Anyway, good stuff, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Gordo.
Cheers.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.